In this video, I'm going to explain to you two methods, two ways for controlling the pencil.
So that you can create awesome drawings which you can then show your mum and then she'll be like, wow, you are my favourite child.
Oh, it's beautiful! Oh, let's put Bart's beautiful drawing up on the fridge.
You see, I've been drawing with pencils since the day I was able to hold one. It's always been my weapon of choice, and over many years I've had lots of practice.
I believe that an artist must master their tools the same way as a warrior would master their sword. Quick side note, by the way.
Did you know that the term freelance actually dates back to a time when it would be used to refer to a medieval mercenary who would fight for the highest bidder? The lance would be their weapon. Get it? Free lance?
Alright, enough with the history lesson. Teach me how to master the pencil.
Well, Box Girl, you've just failed your first lesson, which is patience.
I always hear beginner artists asking how long it takes to improve or how much time a drawing had taken me to finish. People are always trying to shortcut anything that demands a bit of time and effort these days.
Are you even listening?
Look, let's just get right to the point. In this video, like I said, I'm going to discuss two methods for controlling the pencil. These are 1, the way you move the pencil, and 2, the amount of pressure you apply. These two things are the most important, if not the only things I consider when I'm drawing.
It's how I'm able to create all kinds of drawings.
Wow, how do you do that?
Well, if you put that phone down for 10 minutes and paid attention, you'd find out. Boxman, can you tell your sister that she needs to focus if she wants to improve? What? You're addicted to video games. Is this what it's come to?
Anyways, let's talk about that first method.
So let's start by talking about how you move the pencil. Now, obviously, there are many ways you can move a pencil when it's down on the paper, and in doing so, lines or pencil marks are created. I've had a lot of experience creating many realistic drawings over the years, drawings of almost everything. You know, if you can think of it, I've probably drawn it, and so in doing so, I've had to create all kinds of convincing textures and details that represent these things. When rendering a drawing, that's what I mostly focus on, creating textures and applying details. But how you do that depends on the two things that I'm explaining in this video. So first of all, how does moving the pencil come into play when creating textures?
Well, as I just said, by changing how you move the pencil, you in turn change the pencil marks on the paper as a result.
For example, here are a series of different textures that I created with pencil. This was for another tutorial that I made a while back. There's a whole range of different surfaces here, all varying in appearance. The reason this is useful to see is because each of these textures requires me to move the pencil in different ways.
Well, that's great, but can you be a bit more specific in terms of how you're actually moving the pencil?
Well, I was going to get to that. You see, there's so many ways you can move the pencil, but regardless of how you move the pencil, most of the time you are creating straight lines, circular marks, dots. At least that's how I summed it up when I was thinking about what I'm actually doing when creating all of these textures.
For example, here's another video that I made back in the day. For this wooden texture, I'm mostly creating straight lines to represent the grains in the wood. These are at a different length with gaps in between them. And of course there are some exceptions where these lines start to curve, but even as I develop this further, I start to add some smaller lines in between, moving the pencil back and forth. For this brick texture, I'm required to make more circular marks and some dots with the pencil. Of course there's a lot more I need to do here. It's almost like a combination of all three, but to create this rough weathered appearance, I typically move the pencil in a more random way so that each of these bricks appear differently. Here's another example of some pebbles where again some circular marks are made. This texture for a stone wall consists of more random lines that I create by moving the pencil in different directions. I was trying to think of how best to describe this process, and I realised that it goes back to what I said at the beginning of the video.
Moving the pencil to create different marks is only one piece of the puzzle. There's also the second thing to consider and adjust, which is the pressure you apply with the pencil. And we'll talk about that in a moment, but I'm always doing both of these things.
I managed to find some real-time footage from some previous drawings which I did. It's useful to observe this and pay attention to how I move the pencil. I'm either moving it in circular motions or in a more straight back and forth motion depending on what I'm drawing. Anyways, let's discuss that second method now, which plays a big part in all of the examples I've shown so far.
So as I briefly mentioned a moment ago, you can't have one of these methods without the other. I'm referring to them as methods, but they're more so things to consider as you draw. By changing the pressure you apply with the pencil, you are able to create different turns.
To put it simply, the harder you press with the pencil, the darker the pencil marks, and the lighter you press with the pencil, the lighter the pencil marks. However, on a side note, this is where pencil grades come into play, because instead of pressing very hard with a harder graded pencil to try and get a darker tone, you can just use a softer pencil and not press as hard, and probably create a darker mark. I've made a full video explaining pencil grades, but what's more useful here is this image which shows the tones that each pencil creates when applying the same amount of pressure. So although a 2B pencil can probably produce a darker tone that's similar to what a 5B pencil could create just by pressing harder, it might make more sense for you to just switch pencils.
I say all of this, yet I'm the guy who likes to draw with just one pencil, mostly for convenience.
If you're wondering, I use some 2B lead in my mechanical pencil, and I like this grade because I've always found that I'm able to create a wide array of tones just by adjusting the pressure I apply.
So that's a few things to consider there, but now let's look at some examples where doing this allows me to create more realistic textures. In fact, let's rewind back and look at that brick texture again.
Notice how around each brick I've created a darker outline, and for the mortar around these bricks I apply less pressure with the pencil to create a lighter, more consistent shade. I also start to apply a bit more pressure as I work underneath the bricks to give the impression of a shadow. That helps to make these bricks look more three-dimensional. Now jumping over to that stone wall texture I also showed earlier, you can see how as I shade in each of these stones that I've previously outlined, I'm creating random pencil marks by moving the pencil in different directions, and I'm also, at the same time, adjusting the pressure I apply so that each of these marks vary from each other in terms of tone. It's quite satisfying to see that come together. This isn't just a method for drawing textures like these either, this is something that I do when rendering a portrait. For example, here I'm creating a skin texture for Walter White's face, and on screen I've also included the reference image that I'm attempting to recreate here. Now when I look at this reference image, I can see that there's some light on the bridge of his nose, along with some shadows to the side. So as I draw in both of those places, I'll be adjusting the amount of pressure I apply whilst moving the pencil in this circular motion, which does well to represent the pores in his skin. So you can see that I've actually left some gaps there between these marks. Now at the side of his face, I start to notice some straighter marks, and so I change how I move the pencil. For the smaller hairs on his skin, the stubble for his beard, I don't change the pencil I'm using, I just apply more pressure here, and you can see how they start to stand out. Even when drawing the stubble on his head, I make an effort to draw exactly what I see when observing the reference image, but before I start drawing, I think about how I should approach it.
You make it sound so easy, but it's really not that simple.
That's very true, right? You need to remember, Box Girl, that I've been drawing for most of my life. A lot of what I explain here has almost become automatic for me, whereas a beginner artist will likely have to think a bit more about how they are controlling the pencil as they draw.
All of these techniques and practical methods for drawing are great, but there's one fundamental thing that every artist needs in order to draw this way, and I've already said it, it's patience.
Good things take time. You also need to learn how to apply yourself and focus on the task at hand.
If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, then be sure to like, comment and subscribe. I've recently started to create more tutorials on Patreon. I'm aiming for at least 2 per month, so check that out if you're interested. And with that being said, thank you for watching and we'll see you in the next video.